Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a big board Superflex draft on Underdog Fantasy. If you want to join Underdog Fantasy, if you haven't already, click on the link in the video description down below, and you'll get a $100 first match deposit bonus. So if you deposit $100, they will give you an additional $100. It is up to $100, so if you do $50, they'll give you an additional $50, $25, they give you an additional $25. Now, big board Superflex drafts, it is a best ball draft, so you don't have to monitor it throughout the season. The computer on Underdog Fantasy will automatically put in the highest scores on your team every single week into your lineup, and there is no waiver wire, so it's just 20 rounds, and the computer automatically puts your lineup in for you. The roster positions are 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, Superflex, a flex, and 12 bench spots. Superflex is a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, or tight end, and you want to be starting 2 quarterbacks every single week, so there's going to be a heavy emphasis on the quarterback position inside of today's video. So we're going to get on into things. If you have any questions about this draft, if you're not able to understand from what I'm talking about throughout the video, just ask down below in the comment section so I could further help you guys understand what's going on. And first place in this contest is $10 to enter, $100,000 to first place, so hopefully this is the $100,000 team. So without further ado, let's get into the draft. All right, so we got into the draft and we have the number 1 overall pick. Since this is a super flex draft, I think it's pretty much a no-brainer to go with whichever quarterback you believe is going to be the number 1 quarterback at the end of the 2023 fantasy football season. I am going to go with Patrick Mahomes. If you wanted to go Josh Allen, if you wanted to go Jalen Hurts, I don't really think there is a crazy argument that needs to be had. I think all 3 of those guys are the clear top 3, in my opinion, for 2023 fantasy football at the quarterback position. So I wouldn't argue with you if you went with Hurts or Josh Allen at number 1. At number 2 comes off the board with Jalen Hurts, followed by Josh Allen. So a very typical start to a super flex draft. It is pretty shocking if you are not used to drafting in super flex leagues just how much different the first round is. We might only see 2 or 3 non-quarterbacks go in the first round based upon how Superflex drafts have gone in the past for me. Normally, I prefer to be drafting towards the end here, pick 9, 10, 11, or 12, because I feel very confident going with the 1-2 punch at the quarterback position, getting 2 quarterbacks that I'm very confident in. But by the time things come back to me at pick 24, it's very likely that I am not going to be in love with the quarterbacks that are there, and thus I might not even end up selecting one. So after Josh Allen came Justin Fields, Joe Burrow, Joe Shiesty, Justin Jefferson, Justin Herbert, and Trevor Lawrence. Through the first 8 picks, 9 picks, Lamar Jackson at number 9. Only 1 non-quarterback has been selected. Lamar Jackson is very interesting because while we all love the upside he has, while we all believe deep down that this guy can be the number 1 quarterback at the end of the season, what team is he going to be on? And if you're doing a draft right now in April, it's hard to be confident in stacking Lamar Jackson because so many principles of thought process of how you can win a best ball tournament is with stacking. And how are you going to stack with Lamar Jackson when you have no fucking idea which team he's going to be on? That is just kind of my thought process on things. Do I think that Lamar Jackson's a bad pick? No, but it's just something I thought I would point out. Christian McCaffrey, Jamar Chase, and Dak to close out the top 12. So 3 non-quarterbacks going in the first round. The second pick, or the first pick of the second round, is CD Lamb. So when things come back around here, we are definitely going to be looking quarterback. But again, the quarterbacks that go in this range are not quarterbacks that I really love to pay the pretty penny for, right? Pay that high price for. But another problem here with picking number 1 overall here is we get pick 24 and 25, and then we have to wait all the way until pick 48. And if we don't pay the pretty penny, pay the price for the quarterback here, it's very likely by the time the 4th round comes around, again, what I say, we're pick 48, correct? Yeah, pick 48, pick 49. Looking at ADP at pick 48 and pick 49, Kyler, who's probably going to miss half the season, Bryce Young, Jordan Love, Matthew Stafford, quarterbacks I don't love. So it's going to be pretty tough when we get back to that pick to see what we want to do if we don't end up going quarterback here. So after Deshaun Watson came Daniel Jones, Travis Kelce, Cooper Kupp, Tua Tagovailoa, Aaron Rodgers, Tyreek Hill. I was a little bit kind of hoping deep down in my heart that Travis Kelce would fall to us at pick 24, but that seemed very unlikely. It's very interesting to see this year as well, just how much running backs have kind of just fallen off the edge of the earth in most people's minds. Only one running back selected thus far. It was interesting today. Also, Austin Eckler came out and said that he doesn't want to be a Charger. That's the worst case scenario. I know that he requested a trade, but I didn't know that things were really all that bad. I thought, hey, he requests a trade, but if he ends up as a Charger, it'll be just fine. No, this man wants the fuck out of LA. So very interesting. Looking at the board right here, available, we got Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, Geno Smith. I think I'd rather have Jared Goff over Kirk Cousins, so we're going to go with Jared Goff. And then we're going to stack him up with Mr. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Some will say that's a little bit of a reach, but I like to get my stacking partner there. Obviously, if we were just going, who's the best player available, I think you could debate between Jonathan Taylor, Devontae Adams, and Austin Eckler. I think Saquon Barkley could be in that range for some people, but I do think Austin Eckler, as well as Jonathan Taylor, are on a different tier compared to Saquon Barkley. But again, we have no idea what team Austin Eckler is going to be on. Austin Eckler was so dominant because he was such a key focal piece in that LA Chargers offense. So what happens if they use the claw like in fucking, what movie is that? Toy Story, and they pick him up, they throw him onto a different team. Is he that guy on another team? I think so, right? I think that you wouldn't trade for Austin Eckler if you planned on just, you know, not using him the way the Chargers did. But you never know. Some teams are stupid. And we know that, right? We've been watching the NFL. Anyone who's been playing fantasy football for a while knows there are just some teams that are just incompetent. There's some coaches that are incompetent, and yet they still have jobs in the NFL, so must be nice for that. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jonathan Taylor, Geno Smith, Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler. I'm glad I was able to get Jared Goff, because if I'm being honest with you, Geno Smith is so gross. There is no way I would select Geno Smith inside of the third round. I think Geno's going to have a decent year. I just do predict that he's going to fall off. After Geno, Saquon, Austin Eckler, Garrett Wilson, Kirk Cousins. You like that? And Russell Wilson. A quick note, I don't know if I talked about it at the beginning of the video, but I am a little bit under the weather and I'm not feeling super sick, but my voice is a little bit raspy because of it. So if I sound a little bit different, it's not my mic settings or anything. I haven't changed anything. Maybe it's just because I'm a little bit banged up, a little bit sick. So the 3 quarterback strategy for Crash Rich here. Interesting, bold strategy. I understand why people do it. Hey, I have these 3 quarterbacks in best ball. I have the best quarterback room in this draft. So I mean, like, when you pick Kirk Cousins, he's just a safety net, right? I could easily see Trey Lance, Anthony Richardson, some of these guys that go later just feel better to me. Like, I would just rather have taken whichever wide receiver was available or whichever one running back was available, right? So instead of Kirk Cousins, you could have had Devontae Adams, Jalen Waddle, Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall, players that I much prefer to Kirk Cousins. I think that's just a little bit crazy. Now, you know what? When this guy ends up winning the whole fucking thing, he wins the $100K to first place, then I'm going to look like a buffoon. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and lean with my thought process. Obviously, I always lean with my thought process. Jordan Love, Breece Hall, Jalen Waddle, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, Chris Olave, Derrick Henry, and Tony Pollard. I've seen a lot of people fade quarterbacks early in drafts, just jamming the wide receivers and running back, and I get it, right? You can basically build a team of straight-up first-round picks if you don't draft a single quarterback through the first 3 rounds, right? Because you can get Jonathan Taylor. You could have a team that has Jonathan Taylor, Tyreek Hill, and Christian McCaffrey on it, and that would not be surprising at all. And those are all guys, in my opinion, who are first-round picks or are fringe first-round picks. Your first 3 picks can be first-round picks in normal 1-quarterback drafts, which I think is pretty interesting. So when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs, when looking for stacking partners for Patrick Mahomes, there really isn't, I guess, Kadarius Toney. Obviously Kelce, but we weren't able to get Kelce. So we're not worrying too much about stacking right here. We're just going to go best player available. I don't really want anything to do with Mark Andrews right now, knowing what we know about Lamar Jackson and how I think he's going to be gone. So we're just going to go with Ramondre Stevenson. I think he's the best player on the board, BPA. You could go with TJ Hawkinson. I think it's a little early for him. And then we're going to go with DeAndre Hopkins. Now, we haven't drafted DeAndre Hopkins yet. It does seem like he's not going to be an Arizona Cardinal. And I do genuinely still have the thought process that DeAndre Hopkins is one of the better receivers in the NFL. I know he hasn't had the best last couple of seasons, right? He wasn't at his peak, at least last year, but I do think given he lands in the right situation, he could easily be a top 5 wide receiver. And you could also have went Debo, right? I am more off of Debo than a lot of people. I worry about the fact that they don't really have a clear quarterback situation. I worry about the fact that they have Brandon Ayuk, they have George Kittle, they have Christian McCaffrey, they have a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And what happens if Debo Samuel doesn't score as many touchdowns as he scores in 2021? We saw it last year. He didn't score as many touchdowns, and he scored less than half of the amount of points. Now, I understand that the 49ers brought in Christian McCaffrey, and that hurt Debo, and you couldn't forecast that going into last year, but now you can forecast it, right? We're going into next year knowing that McCaffrey's there, knowing that Ayuk's there, and knowing that the quarterback situation is Trey Lance really their guy? Could it be big cock Brock Purdy? There's reports that it might be Sam fucking Darnold, mono man Sam. So I don't want to be sitting here banging the drum aggressively for a 49ers player with how much uncertainty we have right now. Now, I will kind of backtrack, walk back, moonwalk Michael Jackson style back a little bit on that because I'm still confident in drafting Christian McCaffrey, but I'm very nervous about Debo. I don't love Kittle either. I love the player Kittle. It just feels like every year people give him the metaphorical gawk, right? They talk up George Kittle, and he ends up just not being the best because he's always hurt. And obviously that sucks. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not telling you he's going to get hurt. Telling you I'm a little bit nervous. After we went with D-Hop, TJ Hawkinson, Maki, Mark Andrews, Trey Lance, Kyler Murray, DJ Moore, Mike Williams, Najee Harris, Calvin Ridley, Matthew Stafford, and Amari Cooper. Now, we did just talk about Trey Lance, and I do understand why people draft Trey Lance in Superflex leagues this high. I understand why people draft Trey Lance in redraft leagues, one quarterback leagues. It's because of the upside. It's because of the fact that if this guy reaches his peak, if he's able to rush as much as we think he can, this guy could legitimately be the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football. And the reason why he goes so late is because there's a laundry list of risks. The biggest risk is the fact that we have no fucking idea if he's even going to be the starting quarterback of the team. Another risk is we've really never seen it at the NFL level. He's played a handful of games, and in those games, he hasn't looked great. Now, I understand you can discount last year, his first game of the season up against the Chicago Bears. There was a monsoon, a torrential downpour. It looked like a scene out of the 2012 movie where people thought the world was going to end. It was bad. But I understand that, right? I'm not saying Trey Lance is some garbage quarterback. I'm not saying Trey Lance is finished. Trey Lance is ass. But what I will tell you is that I'm not as confident in Trey Lance as some people may be right now. After Amari Cooper comes Christian Watson, Debo Samuel, Bryce Young, Jimmy Guap, George Kittle me Timbers, Jerry Jeudy, Anthony Richardson, and Kenny Pickett. CJ Stroud coming up next. So looking at the quarterbacks, we are going to need 3 quarterbacks because you want to have at least 2 quarterbacks playing every single week. So you want to draft at least 3 or 4. We don't know the bye weeks right now. Obviously, if Patrick Mahomes and Jared Goff have the same bye week, that is going to suck. But that's just the kind of battle you have with drafting this early at pick 72, 73. I don't feel comfortable taking any of these quarterbacks, so we are going to stay away from them. Drake London, Tyler Lockett, Dalvin Cook coming off of the board here. Remember, a difference here is you only need 2 wide receivers instead of 3 wide receivers like a normal underdog draft here in these super flex drafts. But that doesn't really deter me from taking a wide receiver at the spot. First, we're going to go with youth. We're going to get JSN, Jackson Smith, Najigba out of the Ohio State University. I think he has the potential to raise heavily up draft boards in ADP, given he is drafted into the correct situation. And we are back up yet again. And I am going to go yet again with youth, and we are going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs, running back. Now, we don't know where Jahmyr Gibbs is going to land. And I think what's funny is so many people talk about Bijan Robinson, and me included, right? I am someone who loves Bijan Robinson, right? This guy looks like in a 1 quarterback league, he might be a first round draft pick. He might even be a top 6 pick in certain drafts. But the thing is if Bijan Robinson magically faded away, poof, he was gone, fairy dust, then out of nowhere, like an RKO from Randy Orton, Jahmyr Gibbs would be the clear #1 running back in this class. I believe Jahmyr Gibbs is talented enough to become the workhorse running back on a team when he is drafted. Now, it's very unlikely that he's going to be a first-round NFL draft capital running back, but he could easily be a very early on day 2 guy, or if some team ends up going fucking bananas like the Chiefs when they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire instead of Jonathan Taylor or T. Higgins, you know, some team could draft Jahmyr Gibbs and he could land in a perfect situation. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he lands in a spot where he's a part of a committee. But when a running back is as skilled, has as much talent as a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs does have coming out of college, Jahmyr Gibbs, it might take 5-6 weeks, but he could be the #1 back on the team, and we're going to look like geniuses here. After Jahmyr Gibbs comes Ron Jones, Dameon Pierce, Kyle Pitts, Keenan Allen, Miles Sanders, Christian Kirk, and Terry McLaurin. Kyle Pitts is a guy that I have been unanimously off of every single year of his NFL career. His rookie year, I faded him. I said there's no way I'm paying that high of draft capital for a tight end in fantasy football in the rookie year. We all know that tight ends normally do not excel in year #1 in fantasy football because learning the tight end position is very difficult at the NFL level. Even a guy that is as freak of an athlete, as an amazing of a talent as Kyle Pitts, he had a great rookie year, but he didn't live up to the ADP. Last year, I wasn't necessarily, I guess, unanimously fading. I wasn't clearly fading him. I just wasn't super excited about him. And he shit the bed. So again, we're knocking on the door of the season. And again, people are running to the table to select Kyle Pitts, and I just don't see it. Now, one of these years, Kyle Pitts is going to metaphorically teabag me. He's going to put his nuts on my forehead, right? He's going to have an amazing season because he is amazing. If the Atlanta Falcons didn't roll out Desmond fucking Ridder, then I think Kyle Pitts might be amazing. But with Desmond Ridder, whoever they end up going with at week 1, I think it's going to be Ridder. I don't like Kyle Pitts. I'm sorry. Am I going to end up drafting him in some best ball drafts? Yes. He's not a full fade. But I'm not sitting here and I'm not going to somehow galaxy brain myself into liking Kyle Pitts, Keenan Allen, Miles Sanders, Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin, J.K. Dobbins. Just kidding. Dobbins, Michael Pittman, David Montgomery, Dallas Goedert, DeAndre Swift. Interesting. We see David Montgomery go ahead of DeAndre Swift. Now, if this actually ends up being how drafts go, where people talk themselves into Montgomery over Swift, if you're looking for a talent versus talent, you're looking at the tail of the tape if these guys were in a fucking UFC fight, right? I would think Swift is the better player. He is the better player. I know that. But people are so stuck on what happened last year. Now, I'm not saying I love DeAndre Swift. I actually don't like DeAndre Swift at all in fantasy football drafts. But if you're taking David Montgomery over DeAndre Swift, I genuinely think you have to give your head a shake because I think DeAndre Swift is so much better than David Montgomery. After that, we see Jamison Williams, Darren Waller, Chris Godwin, and Hollywood Brown. I think a pretty interesting pairing with Jared Goff is one of these later tight ends that the team has. They brought back in my guy Marvin Jones. I love Marvin Jones, but his upside's pretty limited by Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams. One of these, Brock Wright, James Mitchell, if they don't end up drafting a tight end, now there's a lot of tight ends in the draft class, we could see one of those guys being a solid late round pairing with Jared Goff. And the tight end position this year, after the first couple of guys, it just gets kind of gross, right? Like, I like Evan Ingram, but do I like Evan Ingram significantly more than Dalton Schultz? The answer is no. And Evan Ingram goes 30 fucking picks ahead of Dalton Schultz. I don't love Cole Kmet because they did bring in Robert Tonyan, but what's the difference really between Cole Kmet and David Njoku at the end of the season? Is there going to be a large difference? I don't really think so. Now, quarterbacks are starting to come off the board again. People are starting to worry. I think Baker's job is pretty safe as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback. I think Sam Howell might also stick it out as the Commanders quarterback. So these are guys that we could consider. Mac Jones rumored to potentially be getting traded. That obviously did not end up happening yet, but it still very well could. Looking at the board here, we got 2 running backs. Probably going to hop back on the wide receiver train again. We made it pretty clear that we're fading the tight end position at this spot. We're going to go with Kadarius Toney. I think Kadarius Toney is an absolutely disgusting pick, and I don't think he is even going to end up being very good. I think I'm going to be someone who doesn't love Kadarius Toney, but you can't talk me off the upside, right? If the guy doesn't get hurt, if the Chiefs don't bring in another fucking wide receiver, he's the clear number 1 receiver on this team, and the upside speaks for itself. So we're back up on the board here. And we're going to go with another running back. We're going to go with Javonte Williams. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be scared to draft Javonte Williams, right? Because he's coming off of a big, significant injury. And there's also talks that he might miss the first couple of games. But at the end of the day, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the fact that he might miss a couple of games because he has top 5 running back upside. I believe with Sean Payton coming in to be the head coach of the team, I think Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited Broncos country let's ride himself, is going to be able to take a step forward this year. Because if Russell Wilson plays like he played last year, then everything with Nathaniel Hackett, then everything is a dumpster fire in Denver. I don't think the Denver Broncos are necessarily a playoff team in 2023, right? The AFC is stacked, loaded to the fucking gills. But would I be shocked if they were a team that wasn't ass? If they were able to win 8 games, maybe a fringe playoff team? Maybe knocking on the door of the playoffs. Maybe they win 9 games. No, I wouldn't be shocked at all. I think they're going to be a much better team. I think they have committed to Javonte Williams as the RB1. They actually brought in another running back, Samaje Perine. I don't know why I typed in Dem. I was typing in Den. They brought in Samaje Perine, which tells me that they're confident as Javonte Williams being the guy. I think Javonte Williams, when he is healthy, is amazing. I have been someone, you might say, Nick, I've been watching your videos for the last couple of years, and you never liked Javonte Williams. Well, I didn't like him because I worried about Melvin Gordon, but Melvin Gordon's now gone, and Melvin Gordon is also now washed, so I wouldn't even be worried if Melvin Gordon was there this season. After Javonte, George Pickens, Gabe Davis, Treylon Burks, Joe Mixon, Evan Ingram, Tyler Algier, Mike Evans, and Jamal Williams. It's interesting because through the first 6 rounds, right, we see this quarterback brigade. The only round in which a quarterback wasn't selected was actually the 4th round, and same thing goes with the 7th round, I guess. But after that, we kind of see people are nervous to draft quarterbacks, right? Because once you're in this range, it just gets gross. I think Tannehill is out in Tennessee. I think they are going to draft a quarterback, and I think that quarterback is going to play week 1. I think they want to get rid of Tannehill. Now, if Aaron Rodgers' deal falls through with the Jets, which I'm not saying is going to happen, but what if that happens? Would I be shocked at all if Ryan Tannehill was the starting quarterback of the Jets? No. You want to know why? Because Ryan Tannehill is miles better than the MILF hunter, Zach Wilson, who is absolute fucking garbage. So I think Ryan Tannehill could be in for a starting job somewhere. Now, again, I don't want to draft him in fantasy, not even one bit, but do I think that there is a chance that he's starting on another team for multiple games this year? I think so. I think so. I think there's also a good chance that Jacoby Brissett might be the starter of the Washington Commanders for multiple games next year if Sam Howell doesn't end up working out. Now, Sam Howell looked good in that game he played, right? There's no extensive look at of Sam Howell. It's not like he played 8 games on the season. He had a 1-game sample size. So I'm not here jizzing my pants, and I jizzed in my pants over Sam Howell. I'm not doing that. But what I'm saying is that there's potential that we see maybe half and half, right? Sam Howell plays 8 games. Jacoby Brissett plays 8 games, right? Would that surprise anyone? I don't think so. I think Will Levis is pretty interesting as well. Seems like he's going to get the draft capital. A lot of people think he's going to be one of those guys that sits behind a quarterback, right? It takes him maybe a year or 2 to get in. But we all know, we watch football every year. Injuries happen. We see some garbage quarterbacks take snaps every single year. We see some garbage quarterbacks start. So Will Levis, while he's not my ideal quarterback number 3, could he play multiple games this year? Yes, he could. So I think I would prefer Sam Howell slightly, but if you're talking more about upside, I think Will Levis probably has higher upside than Sam Howell. Looking at the board here, the running backs are definitely getting gross, but I'm glad we have 3 running backs that I'm pretty confident in, even though it might not start the year off where you're like, oh, wow, I have Jahmyr Gibbs and Javonte Williams, right? Those guys might not be ideal come week 1, but a couple weeks in the season, I think we have a pretty solid running back core here. The running backs do start to fall off relatively big soon. It's very interesting how you can just continue to fade quarterback. Or tight end. We're going to go Sam Howell here. Again, I think he's kind of a no-brainer. And I think we're going to go wide receiver. Again, just get more youth onto the roster. We're going to go, I like Michael Thomas. I'm going to talk myself back into Michael Thomas again, but we're going to go Jordan Addison again. If you've been watching these mock drafts, or these real drafts, I title mock drafts sometimes, my biggest thing to do right now is take advantage of the ADP. Jordan Addison is a guy coming off the board in these Superflex drafts at pick 126.7. If he lands in the correct spot, with how good of a player he is, could he be pick 90 if this happened in late August or early September? The answer is yes. Could he be pick 157? Also yes, right? He could land in a spot that people don't like. He ends up buried in the roster. He ends up on a team that already has wide receivers, and it's a little bit gross. I understand that. But he could also land in a situation where he is the second option, or maybe even the premier option. Maybe he's that guy. And we look like we found a steal. Getting youth in these drafts, I think, is a huge advantage early on because not everyone even knows who the fuck Jordan Addison is. Even though he's a consensus top 3 rookie receiver for fantasy football, some people might not even have any idea who he is. So scrolling back down here, after we went with Sam Howell and Jordan Addison, Alvin Kamara, A.J. Dillon, Will Levis, Cortland Sutton, Alexander Madison, Damian Harris, Pat Freiermuth. Alvin Kamara is really interesting because it would be shocking if he wasn't suspended. Like, if he served 0 suspension, I would be shocked. People are talking about how they're going to throw the book at him. He's going to get a year-long suspension. What happens if they give him 6 games? 5 games, right? Then we're like, holy shit, why did we not draft Alvin Kamara higher? Because we all know, while Alvin Kamara wasn't as good last year, Alvin Kamara is still one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. And it makes it very tough to figure out when to draft him. I get why he's going the 11th round, because even I had a pick right there, and I moved on from Alvin Kamara. I would love to have that crazy value on Alvin Kamara. When you're in the season, you're like, wow, look at this, Alvin Kamara. But there's also a chance that they do throw the book at him. There's a chance he gets an 8, 9, 10 game suspension, and there's a chance that when he comes back, Jamal Williams is playing so well that maybe Alvin Kamara's role is less. Maybe Alvin Kamara has fallen off. Now, I don't think that Alvin Kamara has fallen off, but there's still that inkling, that thought process. You know, the devil versus the angel on the shoulder. The devil's telling me that maybe Alvin Kamara is a little bit washed. Maybe Alvin Kamara is getting up there in age. Maybe Alvin Kamara isn't the same Alvin Kamara that we've been used to from the last couple of years. And maybe that is true. Now, again, I don't think that's true, but I'm not 100% confident in saying that Alvin Kamara isn't at least a little bit washed. After Pat Freiermuth, we see Michael Thomas, Zay Flower, Elijah Moore, Jacoby Myers, Kenneth Gainwell, Brian Robinson. If you guys have ended up enjoying this video thus far, hit that subscribe button as well as hitting that like button down below. If you want to sign up on Underdog, click on the link in the video description. Again, $100 first match deposit bonus up to $100. This draft was $10, $100,000 to first place. Hopefully we win the $100,000. Obviously, I'm hoping, but if I can't win it, I'm hoping one of you guys do. That'd be cool. I love getting the messages at the end of the year, like, ooh, I won my league. Thank you, Nick. That's why I do this. I love seeing when you guys win. It really is so fun because maybe my teams might just hit her off in the playoffs. And then I get some comments like, hey, Nick, I won. It's like, you know what? Even though I lost my league, I'm still happy for you. And it's very exciting for me. So I would love one day. I got a comment one time. I think someone won $10,000 or $5,000 in a weekly draft on Underdog. I was like, hell yeah, baby. Let's see if one of us can win the whole thing. If one of us wins the whole thing of any of this, I'd love to even have you on and talk to you and talk about your draft because that would be crazy. There's a lot of luck that goes into things. There's also a lot of skill here. Fantasy football is a crazy game. Elijah Moore's interesting. Loved him coming into the NFL. Obviously, as a Jet, it didn't work out. Crashed and burned. Now he goes to Cleveland. The quarterback situation, I talked about yesterday's video. I love Deshaun Watson this year. I'm very confident in him, but because of his ADP, I'm confident in him. But there's also the other argument. Hey, the guy sucked ass last year. So that makes it pretty interesting for Elijah Moore, especially with Amari Cooper there. Looking at the board again, the running backs are just gross. Tight end wise, tight ends are starting to fall off definitely significantly. So we're probably going to end up drafting 3. So we're just going to go receiver here with this first pick. I am going to go with Odell here. I think a lot of people aren't really factoring in the fact of how good Odell looked when he was healthy. I'm not even saying that Odell is guaranteed to be as good as he used to be, but I think that he is worth the value shot here. Allen Lazard could be really good if they get Rodgers. He's not a guy that I'm super excited to draft. The tight ends are a little bit gross, but we're going to go with Greg Dulcich here. He did show off a bit in Denver last year. Denver does have a decent amount of tight ends, so he's not a guy that I'm screaming to the mountaintops to draft, but I do think at some point I was going to have to draft a tight end that I'm at least somewhat confident in, and he was kind of that last name on here where I'm really confident in that, or at least somewhat confident in going into the season. Again, Odell's a little bit gross as well, but given that we have Amon-Ra, we have Tony, we have Najigba, we have Addison, we have all this youth at wide receiver, we might as well, I know D-Hop's a little old as well, but we might as well throw in a bone here on Odell, and maybe, just maybe, Odell ends up paying off in a big way. We are going to need another running back. I don't think, as a Dolphins fan, the Dolphins are going to bring in another running back, so I think it's going to be Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, but if the Dolphins end up drafting a running back, I would be happy as a Dolphins fan, but it would suck for my best ball teams because in all my best ball teams, I've been drafting one of Mostert or Jeff Wilson because I really do feel like this team is going to be great again. The Dolphins defense with Vic Fangio looks like it's going to be amazing. Vic Fangio could really fix up even the shittiest defense, and the Dolphins have a really good defense, and that could mean they're running the ball a lot late in the game, and you want to know who runs the ball late in the game? The running backs. And having Jeff Wilson or Raheem Mostert potentially on my fantasy team might be huge in these games where maybe the Dolphins are up big and they blow out some of these bad teams. Now, obviously, the Dolphins have a tough schedule. Now, the schedule isn't released yet, but you can see the teams they're playing. You don't know the necessary order. You know who they're playing at home, who they're playing away. And if you look at the schedule, it's not some cupcake bullshit, right? This is a hard schedule. It's a tough schedule, but I think there are going to be games. The Dolphins are up big, just running the clock down. I think Mike McDaniel is going to assess what he did last year and realize that there was a lot of times where the Dolphins should have been running, and instead, because they have Tyreek, they have Waddle, they had Tua when he was healthy, and they started throwing in these stupid situations where they could have ran. I think if you look back at, now again, I'm not trying to go on some rant about the Dolphins. Not everyone is a fucking Dolphins fan like me, but there was a lot of games where the Dolphins probably would have won if Mike McDaniel wasn't making these rookie head coach mistakes. If instead of playing the game like it's Madden and just airing the ball out every time, that's what I do in Madden. I don't like fucking running the ball. It's not fun. I like throwing the ball deep to Tyreek or Waddle. But hey, if I'm an NFL head coach, I'm taking the 3.5 yards, the 4 yards these defenses give you, like against the Bills. There's a lot of times where the Dolphins could have ran, and instead, Mike McDaniel likes to throw his fucking meat on the table. He likes to put his balls in a wheelbarrow and dial up some insane play. They could have beaten the Packers, even though Tua got concussed. They could have beat the Packers if they just ran the fucking ball, and it's really frustrating. Really frustrating, and I'm hoping that Mike McDaniel gets it through his genius brain and figures that out, because then the Dolphins will be unstoppable if you just run the fucking ball. Run the ball, Mike. I know you're watching. Run the ball. Back on into things, though. Raheem Mostert, Josh Palmer, Antonio Gibson, Zay Jones, Jalen Hyatt, fast as fuck, Lightning McQueen, Hussein Bolt, fast. Will that work, though, depending on what team he's on? We'll see. Donovan Peoples-Jones, Romeo Dobbs, Juwan Johnson, Rashawn Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott, Jacoby Brissett, Devin off the chain. Zeke, interesting. He's not on the Cowboys. Well, he's still on the Cowboys technically, I think, because they're not releasing him until, like, there's this stupid date in the NFL that you have to hold a player onto if you want to get an amount of cap. Like, the Dolphins have Byron Jones, who's technically still on the Dolphins, but he's not on the Dolphins, really, because they're getting rid of him. And I think it's either June 3rd or July 3rd. Zeke is one of those guys as well. There is talk that the Cowboys might bring Zeke back in. I think he's a pretty decent value at this point in the draft. Not a guy that I'm ecstatic to draft, but I do think he's a solid pick this late in the draft, obviously. Singletary's a guy. I love Devin Singletary, the player. He's not a good player. Or not a great player, I'm going to be honest. But I think in Houston, with Dameon Pierce, like, if this Houston team gets better, which I think they will in the draft, like, they could be scoring a lot more. They brought in a pretty solid head coach, in my opinion. So I think Devin Singletary is worthy of a flyer late in drafts. Like, if Pierce was to go down, I think Singletary could be really good. Another guy who I think could be really good if an injury happens is Jaylen Warren. If something was to happen to Najee Harris, I think Jaylen Warren would instantly solidify himself as the RB1 on the team. And based on what I saw last year, I think he's pretty good. Again, when you get this late in fantasy drafts, you're just taking a shot on a guy that you think is talented enough to, if they get the opportunity, and we know that Jaylen Warren, given he and Najee Harris are healthy, Jaylen Warren is useless. Useless because Mike Tomlin uses the workhorse running back strategy. You know, he likes the guy to get all the touches, right? So he wants Najee Harris to be the guy. And I get that, right? And I understand that. Hey, if Najee Harris doesn't miss a single game, Jaylen Warren is useless. But if Najee Harris was to get hurt, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, then Jaylen Warren could instantly catapult himself into maybe not top 12 upside, but not really probably being a top 12 weekly back, but could he be a RB2 that's reliable? Yeah. Could he be flex worthy once in a while? Yeah. So I'm pretty confident with these running backs because, again, I love Stevenson, I love Gibbs, I love Williams. Then we just got some other guys. And since we don't need three wide receivers every week in a flex, so 4 wide receivers in a lot of situations, we have a pretty solid wide receiver core as well. Obviously, we still have, did we make our 15th round selection? I think we already did. Yeah, so we've drafted our 15th round selection, so we have round 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So we got 5 more picks left here. I have to do something special. We're definitely going to draft 2 of those picks are going to be tight end, guaranteed, and then maybe another running back and receiver probably is going to be the strategy here. The tight ends do get gross. I said that already. I know the tight ends aren't amazing. You can just wait, draft. You can even draft 4, and I wouldn't care, right? You just draft these guys. Kincaid. He's a rookie. Rookies normally don't succeed in fantasy football. I've talked about that, but in the correct situation, he could have 4 or 5 games maybe where he's useful for fantasy. Same thing goes with you scroll down. How did the other guys get taken? Laporta. Sam Laporta. Did Washington get taken? Darnell Washington didn't get taken either. So you can just draft these ragtag group of rookie tight ends, and maybe one of them ends up playing well. I like Mike Gesicki, the player. I was hoping he would go to a team where he was the clear number 1 tight end. He goes to New England, where they also have Hunter Henry as well. So I don't think Mike Gesicki is really all that great of a pick, if I'm being honest with you. Like, I drafted him a lot early on, thinking he would go to maybe a team that would use him more. Imagine he went to Cincinnati. I'd be laughing straight to the fucking bank, right? Because that's just a much better team. But it is what it is, right? I'm not complaining. I think the thought process was pretty sound on that. So I'll pull the board back up. I know you guys always ask to see the board, so I'm sorry if I don't show it as much. I like to look at all the players being picked. Some streamers, I'm not too sure exactly which ones do this. It might be Fantasy Flock. What he does is he does the draft. I'm pretty sure he's doing the draft on his phone or on a different screen, and then he just leaves the board up the whole time and talks about it that way. I think that's good for live streams. I think necessarily for a video that might not be as ideal, but if you think that's a good idea, I'm down to do anything. I think as we get deeper into the offseason, these draft videos will be live streams, and we'll do a lot of live streams doing fantasy drafts, so you can join in with me. I'm going to also try to do actual redraft leagues with you guys this year. I got a lot of ideas for the offseason, the regular season. A lot of ideas. I'm trying to find a real job as well, a full-time job. So it's going to be harder, but again, this is my dream, is to do this. I love doing this. It's so fun. And even if I'm stuck working in a fucking office for 8 hours a day, I'm still going to come home, grind this shit out, do whatever it takes to be as successful as I could possibly be. Because I love doing this at the end of the day. And it's not necessarily all about the numbers either. While I do want to have 100,000 subscribers one day, if it never happens, I'm not going to be mad. I just enjoy doing this. So back on into the actual draft. Minshew goes. Josh Downs still available. Hodgins might just be the wide receiver 1 for the Giants. So I'm going to go with him, even though he's a little bit like none of these receivers in this range, though. You're not like running to the board to draft him. Like, oh my God, Paris Campbell. Like, no one's thinking that, right? And then we'll just go running back. We'll go another rookie. We'll go Tank out of Auburn. Tank produced pretty well, given the fact that the offensive line was about as useful as a broken condom. So the fact that he performed as well as he did was pretty solid for him. I think we should see a pretty decent season given the situation he's in. Again, that's what's tough about drafting before the NFL draft. Tank Bigsby might land on a team where he's buried as like the RB4, RB3. We never even fucking see him grace the field. There's a chance he goes on a team. He's the RB3 going into the season. Injuries happen, right? Injuries happen. These guys could become fantasy monsters deep down the stretch of the season. And that's what makes these kind of drafts so fun, right? This is 20 rounds. Your normal fantasy draft's over already, right? 15 rounds normally. And 2 of those rounds are spent on a kicker and a defense. So really you have 13 players on your team and then a fucking kicker and a defense. I don't like playing with kickers. I've made this pretty strong. I know originally when I started making videos, I tried to really help people out with kickers. And then I realized kickers are, in my opinion, kickers are the most random part of a fantasy week. They might score 12 points and be the reason why you win. They might score 3 points and be the reason why you lose. So why do you play with them? Why not remove them, add another receiver, or add another flex? That's what all my leagues have done. I think defenses take legitimate skill to figure out. Now, there's randomness on defense. There's randomness with every fucking position in fantasy football. I just feel like losing to a kicker is the biggest kick directly in the cock. So that's why I don't like playing with them. Now, I also get the other argument. Nick, the kickers matter in the NFL, so you got to have them on your fantasy team. Sure. Well, then I get that. Like, I do get that argument. I just not for me. And if I set up these leagues like I plan on doing in the offseason, when we play together, if you get into the league, there's not going to be a kicker. There just won't be. And I play leagues with kickers. It's just if I'm the fucking commissioner, there's not going to be a kicker. Looking at the board here again, the tight ends are getting gross. My fucking TV just shut off for some reason, so we just went fucking dark mode here for 10 seconds while it tries to load because my Wi-Fi is absolute garbage. As we get deep into these videos, if you've watched these before, you would know that things go off the rails the later in the draft we get. So if I start talking about random shit and I'm not talking as much about the actual draft, I think most people get like that, though, to be honest with you. Like, when you get this deep in the draft, you're literally shooting a fucking, not even a half court 3. This is not even a full court 3. This is a 3 from, like, if you're at the YMCA, you're like 4 courts over doing a dude perfect fucking Kareem Abdul-Jabbar hook shot, trying to land it from a zillion feet away. So don't be surprised if I start talking about random shit as we get deeper on into the draft. I also have been trying to kind of condense these. So at points I will stop talking and just fast forward through the draft, I think. Not everyone wants to watch a fucking 45-minute video of me just randomly talking. People have also brought up timestamps, I think, going forward. I'm not sure if this draft will be timestamped, but I think definitely as we get into the summer, when more people are watching, there's definitely reasons to timestamp. There's reasons to maybe even in these where we're talking a little bit longer timestamp. I'm talking about this and that and this and that and just timestamp it, or just timestamp based on picks. Like round 1, here, round 2, 3, 4, and I also will be doing real redraft fantasy mock drafts, like on NFL or CBS, something like that, during the summer. I don't think there's a point doing it now. You are going against people who don't even give a shit. You're going up against the computer, and the ADPs are drastically worse. I think the best ADPs you can find right now are on Underdog. So that's why I do my drafts on here, because again, real people are putting real money up for this. We have stacks for our 2 main quarterbacks. We don't have anything with Howell, but not too big of a deal. I think if you wanted to sprinkle Mike White in some drafts, go right ahead and do that. I think Taylor Heineke as well is interesting in Atlanta, right? Like, is Desmond Ridder really going to be the guy all year long? Like, I could definitely see him making a splash. The thing is, though, we already have Mahomes and Goff, so drafting 4 quarterbacks really doesn't make as much sense unless we get into the final round of the draft and he's sitting there. Then maybe I'll select him. I think Mike White's also an interesting pick, just knowing Tua's injury history. I hope Tua doesn't get hurt. I'm going to pray to the fantasy gods above Tua doesn't get hurt. He's my guy. But we all know injuries are possible, and there are some players that are more injury prone than others, and Tua, at least on paper, appears to be a little bit more injury prone. I hope he doesn't get hurt, though. He is my guy after all. All right. So we definitely need a tight end here. Let's hope we can get Darnell Washington. Come on. Don't be a cunt. Don't be a cunt here, TJ Allen draft him. Don't do that to us. We need Darnell Washington, baby. This guy is a fucking freak, man. Look up, if you want to see something crazy, look up Darnell Washington highlights. That's some shit that you can get your rocks off to, if you know what I'm saying. Please don't auto-pick Darnell Washington. Hendon Hooker. Darnell Washington, welcome to the squad. We need our tight end. Austin Hooper in Viva Las Vegas. Now, Austin Hooper hasn't been great in what feels like a decade. They got rid of Darren Waller, so they need a new tight end. They brought in Austin Hooper. I don't think he's going to be amazing because Jimmy Garoppolo is not that great, but Jimmy Garoppolo does love to throw to tight ends. So maybe Hooper does have a decent year. We're going to fast forward to our final pick here. If at any point you want to pause and look at the board, you can go right ahead, but we'll just fast forward to our last pick. Talk about some things maybe as we get close, so we won't just be making our pick, bam, right to the pick, but be right back, or not be right back, I'll, 1 second. Whoopsh. You see that? That was some cool fucking audio that I added in there. It totally wasn't my voice, my lips making that noise. Yeah, we're almost back up here. Again, the bottom of the draft is just full on YOLO. Just draft anyone. I think Heineke might be the best pick here, but again, we already have 3 quarterbacks. Problem is, I could really see Heineke playing a bunch of games. Let's look at the running backs. Dearness Johnson, Pierce Strong, Joshua Kelly, Ronald Jones, Boston Scott. Wide receivers, I mean, there is just absolutely nothing here. Could go Marvin Jones. I think we're just going to go Marvin Jones, honestly. Going to go Marvin Jones for that Detroit stack. I think Marvin Jones is the clear receiver 3 there. I doubt he's going to have, like, much usage on my team, but again, we have so much youth. Like, we have Addison, we have Smith and Ajigba, and then we have Hodgins, who really knows what Hodgins is going to do, right? So, like, early on the season, we might be scrambling for some points. So, it is possible Marvin Jones enters the lineup a couple of times early on. So, we're going to go 3 quarterbacks. Some people might go 4. I think our team was pretty good. So, to recap the squad we got here, Pat Mahomes, Jared Goff, Sam Howell at quarterback. Our running backs were Ramondre Stevenson, Gibbs, Williams, Devin Singletary, Jalen Warren, and Tank Bigsby. Our receivers were Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, JSN, Kadarius Toney, Jordan Addison, Odell Beckham Jr., Isaiah Hodgins, Marvin Jones. Our tight ends were Greg Dulcich, Darnell Washington, and Austin Hooper. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below as well as in that like button. It would help me out a ton. I do love you guys all. I hope you have a great guys' day. And as always, good boy.